Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining as the clock strikes 8:30, March 5th, 2025, episode 30. Give me 1 second. Again, it wouldn't be an episode without, getting banned or something, Oh, boy. So, anyway, if you are not subscribed to my YouTube at Brew Media, go do that now. Like, share, and of course, all comments are welcome. Tonight, key economic numbers, government employees drag the economy, home sales plummet, and my perspective on Trump's speech last night. Remember that it is better to die on your feet for freedom than to die a slave to the state. And now let's get into it. Great. So I appreciate everybody for taking the time, coming and checking me out. I appreciate you. I hope everybody had a great day. And there's so much in the news going on. So like I said, we're going to get into a bunch of different stuff. I'll get into the Trump stuff later. So we received some new economic data, and it wasn't good. Jobless claims was more bad news. We had a huge spike in people filing for unemployment insurance. As we make firing great again, the unemployment numbers came in hotter than expected. Filings came in at 242,000 filings when the estimates were supposed to be 210,000. So that was a miss by 32,000. Moving averages also jumped up from 215 to 224,000. I do believe we're going to get a lot more unemployment. The good news is that many of these filings are, will be from the government, because that's where the majority of employment happened under the Biden administration. As Biden was adding more government employees, what he was doing was dragging down the economy and making the job numbers look a lot better than they actually were. And if you remember, the job numbers were so bad, they even lied with the numbers that they put out. And I'm going to talk about how government employees drag down the economy. Now it looks like with Doge, we're going to get rid of a lot of these employees. The only problem with that is that the private sector is firing people as well. And so the worst thing is that if the economy stalls out, which is what the numbers are showing, we're going to get stagflation. The good thing about removing government employees is that they undermine productivity of the private sector. And most of them just gum up the system. Government employees actually don't pay taxes because the taxes that they pay are from our taxes. So what the government does is they take a little bit of the taxes that we've paid them to go pay the taxes. So if we can turn these government employees into private sector workers, then that would greatly increase productivity and help the economy. But that's if they find a job in the private sector. Unemployment rolls, which is going to be problematic for the Federal Reserve, because many of these workers are going to have a tough time finding employment, especially if they work for the government for a very long time and have lousy work ethics. I've stated on several episodes how the Government Employees Act, and even, I've stated on several episodes how government employees act at work. I mean, everything from how they dress to, how they treat people. Some of these people have no real skills, and they really don't know how to treat you. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens to most of these people, because the shock that most of these government workers are going to face is that in the private sector, you now have to work for a company that cares about your productivity. And that is going to give you a much more honest performance review. One thing that really stands out to me whenever I go into these government buildings are all the awards that I see that they give themselves. You know, the next time you go into any of these government buildings, whether if it's a federal, state, or county building, just look at the walls. They're filled with giving themselves accolades for all the wonderful work that they do. You know, generally, I see nothing that deserves an award when I go in my government buildings. You know, see, in the private sector, you don't see all of that congratulatory self-praising. You know, all of that kind of goes out the window. In the private sector, employees aren't really concerned with hanging nonsense on the walls, but rather getting their job done. Usually, and I know this because I have, people in sales and in other businesses, I have employees that actually compete with each other, right? To see who's going to get the highest pay, or, who can complete the most work. In government, they don't even care, what they get done. It doesn't even matter. A lot of times you go in there, you see them on their cell phones, completely dicking off. Hi, Amy. Hi, Julie. So the private sector is held to a higher standard because they have to appease their customers. And they cannot get away with doing their jobs, being rude, deciding not to show up. So many of these government employees have a rude awakening coming if they've been in the government for too long. And the reason why all of this is going to be tough for the Federal Reserve is because we're going to have prices going up along with inflation and unemployment. Usually when unemployment spikes, the Federal Reserve can juice the economy by lowering rates and sprinkling money all over the economy. But this time, if they try to lower rates while inflation is already climbing, they're going to ignite an inflation fire to levels we haven't seen in our lifetime. So this time, the Federal Reserve has to proceed with caution. And if they don't, we're going to have another decade of high inflation. Give me 1 second. So I want to dovetail that into my second story. Let's see here. Pending home sales collapsed in January. Now, I've been watching home sales. Everybody knows that's one of the key economic issues that I look at, along with autos and credit cards. So in January, home sales had collapsed. In fact, they were down in December as well, although December numbers weren't as bad as January, but were still pretty bad. December had a minus 4.1, but in January they were expecting a minus 1.2, but instead we got a minus 4.6. So we actually got back-to-back four handles on pending home sales, and the index also tanked from 74.2 down to 70.6. So we are in bear territory in the housing market, which nobody was predicting. Why? Because prices are too high, along with mortgage rates being too high. People are tapped. I just did a report the other day talking about the influx of existing homes flooding the market to higher than pre-pandemic levels. So the housing shortage crisis is over. So inventory now is very high and are staying in the market, and houses are staying on the market for a much longer amount of time. We also see a huge amount of housing contracts being ripped up and thrown away. People are no longer just looking at the price of the mortgage or the interest rates, but now they're also looking at the other cost of a home: insurance, maintenance, HOAs, property taxes. And what's happening is they're doing the math and saying, wait a minute, I can't take a chance, because the prices are unstable. So unfortunately, many of these deals that look like they're going to go through end up falling through the floor. And that wouldn't happen during a strong economy, right? If this was the golden age, right, that would never happen. During the golden age, one person can have a job and buy a house working 40 hours a week. But, just to kind of put this into perspective, I mentioned this on a previous episode, and I really want to really focus in on what's going on in the housing market so that people can make good judgments on their own on what they should do. So I usually price things in real money, gold, right? So homes, if you price them in gold, they fell even more. Now, I've done this on a previous show, but I want to do it here. Again, so the average price of a home fell, the average price of a home in February was $348,000. At the same time, this time, February of 2022. Gold back then was $18.85 per ounce. That means it would have taken 184 ounces of gold to purchase one house. Today, the average price of a home, according to Zillow, is $419,000. Gold, however, is $2,950 per ounce. So today, it would take 142 ounces of gold. So we're talking about homes losing 42 ounces of gold, or roughly $123,000 in just the past 3 years. Okay? So home prices are actually losing, on average, $40,000 per year based on real money. And nobody in the media is talking about it because they're trying to hide what's going on in housing. Now, as the price of your home is going down, right, in real money, the price to hold that house is going way up when you talk about taxes, insurance, maintenance costs. If you need to go down to the town, get a permit, all of that stuff has gone through the roof. And this is why people are ripping up contracts. This is why people are having a tough time selling their home. This is why things are staying on the market longer than they should. Because again, the more that we destroy the dollar, right, the more that we destroy the prosperity in this country, the harder it's going to be for a family to make a living. Oh, I'm sorry, Amy. Don't worry. Somebody's going to look at that house. Hey, if anybody wants to buy a place in Florida, go check out Amy's place. It's beautiful. And I really hope that your place moves a lot quicker than what I'm seeing in this data, because homes are, they're staying on the market much longer too. And so, definitely. So a lot of people ask me, hey, Bones, what's your assessment on the economy right now? I think the economy's in real trouble. If you ask me personally, I think that is why Trump got elected. The voters are living in this economy, and they rejected the phony economic numbers that the government and media were putting out. Despite what Wall Street and the eggheads were saying, the public understood that that wasn't the case. They are struggling to get by. Many people are working 2 and 3 jobs just to get by. Parents are trying to figure out, hey, I want to raise my children, but I got to go to work, right? And so Biden actually has the all-time record for Americans that work 3 jobs. Okay, that was never even considered when I was growing up. Somebody working 3 jobs? I mean, when does the person have time to sleep? Now check out these numbers. Today, now I believe this stuff counts. Today, over 8.3 million Americans are having to work multiple jobs. That's the people that we know of. That don't count all the people working underground, right? Making cash on the side, right? Trying to subsidize their homes, right? That is more people working multiple jobs than the entire population of New York City, okay? The mistake Biden made was that he wasn't truthful to the American people who were living in this phony economy. Now, unfortunately, Trump is starting to make the same mistake by overselling the economy, talking about entering a golden age. These numbers are all going in the wrong direction. So if Trump wants to continue to oversell the economy, then the voters will throw out the Republicans. I'm old enough to remember when one job paid the bills, right? One job, you could have 2 cars in the driveway, right? You could have a nice house, a nice pad, right? Those days are gone. And as the economy got weaker and the dollar continues to lose purchasing power, households had to pull the homemaker off the bench, right? And into the workforce. How did that work out, right? And what they did was they dressed it up as women's liberation. Look, you can be so liberal, go get a job, right? Don't worry about your kids, right? Go stick your kids in school or whatever, whatever box institution you could stick them in. And they convinced a lot of people, hey, this is great, right? You go working for the man, making no money, you and your husband, right? Or whatever situation you got. And, and we'll just dump your kids, wherever we can, because now you got to go make a living. Well, how did that all work out for society? To help pay the bills, now we have everybody off the bench. And people are being squeezed like never before. Americans can see the prices rising rapidly, and their debts are rising as well. We've had many people who have had their savings completely depleted, and many are having to decide to buy medicine or food. They are one disaster away from the streets for many people. Also, another really bad thing, we have a record amount of debt. As interest rates are climbing, so I believe we're in a real mess, and we're running, these massive trade deficits, and record high, budget deficits. And I believe that we're heading for a much, larger financial crisis than we had in 08 and 09. Now, so far, the Fed has been able to push off the day of reckoning, but I believe, we're quickly running out of magic tricks to keep reinflating these asset bubbles. That is why I really wished last night that President Trump would have leveled with the American people and tell them, hey, we're heading for some pain so people can prepare. Right now, we have so many people that are clueless to the economic disaster that is coming because they're being fooled by the media and by all the talk. This is going to be a huge mistake, and many people will suffer as a result needlessly. Now, I was one of the people who predicted the 08 crisis, 07-08 crisis, and, I seen it coming, and I'll never forget. People, the housing market can never go down, the stock market can never go down. It was a go, go, go. Just like, I'm sure, whenever you read the history books, 1928, 26, 27, 28, right before 1929 crash, it was the same thing. It was like, when you're in a bubble, you just can't see it. And so that's what's going on. So many people are stuck in a bubble, in this economy, and they just think that this could just go on forever, and it can't. So I want to get into Trump's speech last night, and I want to give a little bit different perspective than what I've seen on both channels. Because there was some good, there was some bad, and then there was just some ugly behavior from my perspective. It really is fascinating to me how differently Democrats and Republicans look at these type of speeches. If you're a Democrat, chances are you hated everything that Trump said last night. If you're a Republican, chances are you thought the speech was pretty good. If you were hardcore MAGA, you were horny, you were like, this was the greatest speech of all time, right? But if you were a libertarian like myself, you're probably numb to these speeches. It's a lot of central planning, that both parties promote, and we wish what from my perspective, I'd like more conversation about individual and economic liberties, sound economic principles, limited government, sound money, and most of all, 90 minutes, I heard nothing about the Constitution, not even once. And I wish we would talk about this stuff. So when I'm judging these speeches, I tend to look for a more economic perspective, because at the end of the day, it's the economic, stupid, right? That's the saying that was famous when Bill Clinton was elected. And it really is. It's the economy. And so Trump spoke for 90 minutes. And, but what did I notice? Now, I'm not going to get into the nonsense that happened last night with Representative Al Green, holding up the paddles with the Democrats. I'm not going to get into, using victims as political props. I mean, that's how I see it. Now, you might see it a different way. I don't like it when the Democrats do it. I don't like it when the Republicans do it. I remember when Marjorie Taylor Greene was screaming at Biden. I mean, I am so sick and tired of sending people to Congress and they act like fools. Shouldn't we demand more from these people? Look, you don't like Trump? That's fine. But at least you show respect for the office, right? You show respect to your constituents, right? Hey, you want to protest? That's fine. I am all for civil disobedience. But, there's a time and a place for everything. And I'm really kind of tired of how both parties play these speeches. And so from a libertarian, independent perspective, I usually hate these speeches because they don't talk about the issues that I think Americans care about. So I'm not going to get into any of the food fight stuff that you've seen on CNN or Fox. I'm going to really dig in and talk about the issues that I know you care about and that most Americans care about. So I want to talk about something I thought was really funny. So I was watching Mike Johnson shaking his head behind Trump when Trump was talking about how Doge found USAID fraud, USAID fraud. But the thing that I found so hypocritical about Mike Johnson shaking his head is that he voted for USAID spending over the past 2 years, right? He was the leader. He voted every time to not only give USAID more money, but to increase the spending. So on TV, Mike Johnson shakes his head back and forth in disgust, yet he voted in every budget for it. And here's another surprising fact. The Republicans, even knowing how disgusted you are as a voter with USAID, they're slipping it into this new multi-trillion-dollar budget, right? So they're not getting rid of USAID. They're actually keeping it in there. Yes, you heard it here first. Because neither CNN or Fox News is going to tell you that, right? So, Mike Johnson, I've always called this guy out. He's a fraud. He's a rhino. I always said if you had to draw a cartoon character of a rhino, that's Mike Johnson. And he's got to go. Yeah, that's my opinion. So just to show you what a fraud politicians are, that was more offending to me than a lot of the other nonsense that I've seen, because that really cuts through the insulting of our intelligence. So anyway, I want to talk about 90 minutes, because it was a 90-minute speech, and I want to talk about the issues that were missed. So 90 minutes, Trump didn't mention anything about health care, trying to reform it. He'd no mention of abolishing Obamacare or any of these social health programs that we have. 90-minute speech. So that's what I'm saying. Most of my perspective is economics. 90 minutes, zero talking about the skyrocketing cost of prescription drugs and how Americans pay 30, 40, even 50% higher than the rest of the world. Zero talk. 90 minutes, zero talk about 60% of Americans now living paycheck to paycheck, right? No talk about that. 90 minutes, zero talking about the housing crisis, whether if you're talking about people struggling to pay their rents, struggling to pay their home mortgages, cannot afford to purchase a home, cannot find a buyer to sell their home, because homes have become unaffordable and many homeowners have become trapped in their home that they now cannot afford. 90 minutes, zero talk about the housing crisis. Again, 90 minutes, no talking about the millions of people that cannot handle a $1,000 or $2,000 disaster. Like, let's say if your car breaks down, right? For many people, a $1,000 disaster is like the apocalypse. And not only are they worried about paying the $1,000, right? But they are worried about missing their job, right? Because these people are living check to check. So I seen zero conversation about the real issues that I thought Trump was elected on, but instead we got, in all fairness, 3 separate standing ovations for Elon. Joe Biden was mentioned 16 times. It really became a pep rally for Republicans and a protest for Democrats. In my perspective, our government last night looked completely dysfunctional from an outsider's perspective, and our priorities were so far from reality, from where our society is actually struggling. Let me give you some more. So 90 minutes, there was zero talk about the 60% of Americans struggling. And I thought Trump missed a great opportunity to tell Congress to not raise the debt ceiling or to tell Congress to balance the budget. No talk about it. Mr. President, we have over 800,000 homeless Americans today. No mention of it. 20 million Americans today spend over 50% of their income just for the roof over their head. That is unsustainable. Again, no mention of it. Zero talk about wealth inequality. I have to bring this up because it's important, right? Look, the reason why libertarians don't win national elections, right? We win on a local level. The reason why we don't win, because we don't get bought off by billionaires, right? The Democrats have their billionaires. The Republicans have theirs, right? The reason why we don't have billionaires that buy our politicians in the Libertarian Party is because we don't offer them anything, right? We're not trying to give them a tax cut or a subsidy, right? We're not, looking to pick winners and losers in the economy. So as a result, we don't get, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, at our inauguration. So, I have to mention that Trump, at his inauguration, had 3 of the most wealthiest people standing behind him as he was being sworn into office. Those 3 people had more wealth than the bottom 50% of Americans. 3 people, But more importantly, not only did Trump not talk about these important kitchen table issues, instead he was promoting adding taxes, which is tariffs, which is going to hurt that bottom half. Also, 90 minutes, zero conversation to fix the dollar. There was no conversation. And again, 90 minutes, where was the Constitution, right? No talk of the Constitution. It's almost like the Constitution never existed. But Trump did talk about cutting taxes on tips, Social Security, and overtime work. However, there's a problem with that too. See, instead of paying taxes on tips, Social Security, or taxes on overtime, what it means is if he removes those taxes, first off, those taxes pay for government, right? If you're not paying those taxes to pay for the government that you're using, okay, then the money must come from somewhere else. Well, where's it going to come from? It's going to come from borrowing, printing, creating more debt, creating more inflation, which is the very last thing that we need. You will end up paying far more through the inflation tax than if you paid the government through these regular tax methods. So this speech, like all the other ones in the past, were nothing more than party pep rallies. So again, I thought that these were the issues that should have been talked about. I think that there was a real disconnect. Again, it was all about attacking each other and trying to show for the camera. But again, Trump was elected on economics, and he really left out so many key economic issues. And again, I thought it was another missed opportunity. Look, he's got to stop campaigning. The campaign's over, right? Joe Biden's over. You mentioned Biden 16 times, but, you're not mentioning anything about the food prices, right? You're not mentioning anything about the housing cost, auto cost, right? The cost of labor, right? Inflation, right? You're not talking about the issues that got you there. So I really thought that this was a real missed opportunity. Now, again, I didn't get into the mudslinging. I didn't get into he said, she said stuff really, as far as holding up paddles, or Al Green being thrown out for his civil disobedience. But I just wanted to kind of give you my perspective. And look, so I'm going to call it short tonight. I appreciate everybody for coming and checking me out. I hope everybody has a great night and takes care. Take care.
Joining us in the gallery tonight is a young man who truly loves our police. His name is DJ Daniel. He is 13 years old, and he has always dreamed of becoming a police officer. But in 2018, DJ was diagnosed with brain cancer. The doctors gave him 5 months at most to live. That was more than 6 years ago. Since that time, DJ and his dad have been on a quest to make his dream come true, and DJ has been sworn in as an honorary law enforcement officer, actually a number of times. The police love him, the police departments love him. And tonight, DJ, we're going to do you the biggest honor of them all. I am asking our new Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, to officially make you an agent of the United States Secret Service.